You know, there's something incredibly powerful about a woman who shows up with love, loyalty, and her whole heart, only to be met with neglect, games, or emotional wounds. And what's even more powerful, what happens next? Because when a good woman gets hurt, it's not just pain that follows. It's a shift, a turning point, a wake-up call for him, and sometimes even more so for her. A good woman, when hurt, doesn't fall apart the way people might expect. She may feel the pain deeply, even to her core, because she was all in. She gave not just her time or attention, she gave her soul. She was present emotionally, spiritually, and physically. When that kind of woman gets hurt, it stings in a way that words can barely capture. But here's what people don't often talk about. She doesn't break, she awakens. The heartbreak doesn't just leave her wounded, it leaves her wiser. Her spirit may stumble, but it doesn't stay down. The very pain meant to undo her becomes the force that clears her vision. She begins to see herself not as the broken one, but as the one who cared too deeply in the wrong direction. She starts to recognize how much strength it took to love in a world that sometimes rewards indifference more than devotion. The woman who once made excuses for his behavior now starts to see the truth between the lines. She realizes she didn't deserve the passive-aggressive comments, the emotional distance, the inconsistency masked as confusion. She begins to connect the dots between her kindness and how it was mistaken for weakness. What once kept her quiet, the hope that he would change, the belief that things would get better, the idea that love means enduring, starts to fade. In its place comes a new understanding that self-respect and boundaries are not oppositional to love, but essential to it. Her heart, once so full of hope for what could be, begins to turn inward, not to shut the world out, but to realign with her own value. She may still care. She may still have moments of longing. That's real. That's human. But there's something shifting. Her energy no longer flows toward proving her worth to someone who couldn't see it. It flows toward rediscovering herself. She stops chasing clarity from someone who always gave confusion. She begins to understand that the most powerful form of healing isn't found in someone's apology. It's found in choosing herself. And that choice, that's the moment of awakening. The smile returns, not forced but free. The way she walks, talks, and carries herself subtly shifts. She is no longer the version of herself that tolerated being mistreated in the name of love. She becomes more selective. Not closed off, but intentional. She looks for consistency, honesty, emotional maturity, the things she once overlooked while hoping for potential. Her standards aren't higher because she's bitter. They're higher because she knows what it costs to settle. She understands now that she was never too emotional, too demanding, or too complicated. She was simply asking to be met at the level she was showing up. And that awakening doesn't just change her love life. It shifts how she shows up in friendships, in work, in life. Everything gets filtered through this new lens of awareness. The woman who once gave everything to someone who gave little now pours that energy back into herself. When a good woman gets hurt by a man she deeply cared for, something powerful begins to unfold, not in him first, but in her. His behavior, whether it was betrayal, neglect, dishonesty, or emotional immaturity, becomes a catalyst. The emotional pain he causes may be unintentional, but the impact is transformative. What he believed would fade, she feels entirely. But instead of staying stuck in the wound, she begins to evolve. His actions don't just break her heart, they trigger her growth. She starts asking herself deeper questions. What am I tolerating that I wouldn't want for someone I love? Why do I feel the need to earn affection that should be freely given? She starts to wake up from the illusion that love means suffering, and begins to understand that love, real love, starts with how she treats herself. In the beginning, she may still hold on. She might give him the benefit of the doubt, convince herself to be patient, tell herself he's trying. But eventually, the emotional mismatch becomes too obvious to ignore. His inconsistency, his lack of accountability, the way he shows up only when it's convenient. These things become louder than his words, and she starts to shift, not out of anger, but out of realization. She understands that her loyalty cannot fix someone's lack of clarity. Her depth cannot fill someone else's emotional gaps. His inability to value her does not reduce her worth. It only exposes his limitations. The transformation is often quiet. She may not announce that she's changing, but the signs are there. She stops over-explaining herself. She stops accepting breadcrumbs. She no longer rearranges herself to fit into spaces that make her feel small. She doesn't become hard. She becomes discerning. The way she speaks, the boundaries she sets, the energy she allows near her, it all begins to reflect a woman who has learned through pain. And even if she still feels the remnants of love for him, she no longer abandons herself to keep him. That shift is everything. Ironically, this evolution is often what he starts to notice. When it's too late, he sees the woman who once waited by the phone now unbothered and unavailable. He watches the softness he took for granted be reserved for those who actually earn it. He may even try to come back, sensing that something valuable slipped through his fingers. But what he doesn't realize is that she's no longer the same. The version of her that once accepted less no longer exists. And the man who hurt her, he unintentionally opened the door for her to level up. Not just in how she dates, but in how she sees herself. The woman who once doubted her instincts now listens to them. The one who used to compromise her needs now honors them. The one who tolerated excuses now expects effort. His actions pushed her to rise, not for revenge, not to prove anything, but because she finally realized that she deserved better. There comes a moment after the pain, after the confusion and heartbreak, when a good woman goes quiet, not because she has nothing left to say, but because she's said it all. She's pleaded, explained, expressed, and opened her heart so many times that the exhaustion sets in. And in that silence, something profound happens. She starts to detach, not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with clarity. Her silence becomes louder than any words she ever spoke. It speaks volumes, it echoes, it shifts the dynamic entirely. Where once there was effort, messages, trying to hold things together, now there is space. And that space forces reflection, not just for her, but for him. He may not notice it at first. He might even feel a strange relief that the arguments have stopped, that she's no longer asking for more, no longer pointing out the ways she feels unheard. But slowly, that silence begins to feel different. He doesn't hear her voice anymore, not in the texts, not in the phone calls, not in the familiar tone of concern or care. The comfort of her emotional availability starts to vanish, and what was once background noise, the woman who always had his back, is now gone. Her absence isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, spiritual. It's in the way she no longer reacts, the way she no longer explains, the way she no longer waits. And for her, that silence is not just absence, it's power. It's the decision to stop fighting for someone who doesn't fight back. It's choosing to conserve her energy instead of pouring it into someone who only drains her. Her silence isn't passive. It's intentional. It's the decision to value her peace over the chaos of chasing validation. It's the way she reclaims herself, piece by removing her energy from a space that never deserved it. She begins to realize that if her presence didn't make him rise, her absence will make him reflect. This shift doesn't always feel strong in the beginning. Silence can be heavy. The temptation to reach out, to break the stillness, to see if he notices, it's all there. But the longer she sits in her silence, the more she starts to hear herself again. Not the version of herself wrapped in his needs, but the one that was buried beneath all the noise. She reconnects with her own voice, her own rhythm. She begins to trust herself again, and slowly her silence becomes her sanctuary. Meanwhile, he's left to sit with what he created. He remembers the sound of her laugh, the way she supported him, the way she made him feel seen. And now, none of that is accessible. Not because she stopped caring, but because she finally realized she was the only one trying. Her silence teaches him more than her words ever could. It doesn't yell, it doesn't accuse. It simply leaves him with the consequences of his actions. When a man hurts a good woman, he often doesn't realize what he's done until long after the damage is done. In the moment, he may feel justified, distracted, or even indifferent. He might assume that she'll always be there, that her love is a given, her patience is endless, and her loyalty is unshakable. He underestimates her value because he's so used to it being consistently offered. He mistakes her forgiveness for weakness, her affection for neediness, her understanding for approval. And so he continues to take without giving, to receive without reciprocating, to stay emotionally distant while she keeps showing up wholeheartedly. But at some point, something changes. She stops chasing. She stops asking. She stops trying to prove her worth. And just like that, she's no longer available. It's not a loud exit. It's subtle, like the slow fading of a light he assumed would always shine for him. At first, he doesn't notice it. He thinks the silence is temporary, that she's just upset, that she'll come back. But time passes and she doesn't. Her energy is no longer orbiting around him. She no longer reaches out, no longer cares what he's doing or who he's with. The very things he took for granted now become the things he misses. Her good morning messages, the way she listened without judgment, the way she stood by him when he didn't deserve it. All gone. And for the first time, he starts to feel the emptiness. The silence isn't peaceful anymore. It's loud, and it echoes all the ways he failed to appreciate her when he had the chance. He starts remembering the little things, the way she looked at him when he spoke, the way she supported his goals, the way she made life lighter just by being around. And suddenly he feels the weight of her absence. It's not that she was perfect, it's that she was real. She loved him with depth, with consistency, with the kind of heart that doesn't come around often, and he knows it. He begins to see her not just as the woman he hurt, but as the woman he lost. The realization doesn't hit all at once. It creeps in slowly, showing up in memories, in quiet moments, in the spaces where she used to be. It's in the people he dates afterward who don't measure up. It's in the way he compares their energy, their presence, their love to hers. By the time he realizes her worth, she's already grown beyond him. She's built a new world where his validation isn't needed. She's found peace in her independence, strength in her healing, and clarity in her solitude. And he's left trying to figure out how he let something so rare slip through his fingers. He scrolls through old messages, revisits old pictures, plays back conversations, hoping to feel close to what he once had. But what he doesn't understand is that she didn't just leave. She evolved beyond the version of herself that would accept what he gave. There comes a point in a woman's healing where she no longer waits for an apology, an explanation, or a neatly tied-up ending. When a man hurts a good woman, her initial instinct might be to search for closure. Through long conversations, second chances, or silent hope that he'll one day understand what he did. She replays the past, examines the details, wonders where it went wrong. She may even question herself, wondering if she asked for too much or misunderstood what he could offer. But over time, something inside her begins to shift. The energy she once invested in trying to understand him or change his mind starts to turn inward. She begins to see that closure doesn't come from someone finally admitting their fault. It comes from no longer needing them to. The woman who once needed to be heard now listens to herself. She stops seeking answers from someone who wasn't willing to give them. She lets go of the idea that the person who hurt her is responsible for her peace. There's strength in that kind of release. It's not an overnight process, but it is a powerful one. She takes back the emotional space she had once rented out to him. She deletes the messages she was holding on to. Not because she's angry, but because she's done romanticizing the pain. The narrative begins to change from "why did he do this to me?" to "why did I stay as long as I did?" And instead of feeling shame in that reflection, she finds growth. The woman who no longer seeks closure from him becomes the closure herself. She rewrites the ending not through his words, but through her actions. She builds a life that no longer includes the version of herself that accepted confusion as love or inconsistency as effort. Her healing is in her choices, in her peace, in her refusal to lower her standards just to feel less lonely. She becomes more grounded, more self-aware. The same love she once poured into him she now gives to herself. And this transformation doesn't need to be loud or visible. It's in the calm of her presence, the depth of her self-respect, the boundaries she sets without apology. People may notice the change, but they won't always understand the story behind it. They won't see the nights she cried, the doubts she wrestled with, or the conversations she played out in her head. But she knows, and that knowing becomes her strength. She no longer needs to prove anything to the man who couldn't see her worth. She's not interested in reopening doors that led to dead ends. She's not waiting for redemption or recognition. She becomes the kind of woman who doesn't chase closure, she embodies it. And when she walks away, it's not to teach him a lesson. It's because she finally learned her own. There's a specific kind of pain a man feels when he realizes he lost a woman who truly loved him. Not just any woman, a good woman, one who had his back when it wasn't easy, one who gave her heart without holding back, one who stayed even when her needs weren't fully met. At first, he might not notice the shift. He might believe that she'll always be there, that the bond they shared was unbreakable, that her patience was infinite. But that's the mistake so many men make. They confuse endurance with permanence. They assume that just because she's always been there, she always will be. And then one day, she's not. She's no longer accessible. She's no longer emotionally invested. She's no longer his. He might see her out, smiling in a way she hasn't in months, laughing with people he's never met, carrying herself with a new kind of confidence. She's glowing, not for attention, not for revenge, but because she finally took her power back, and that glow, it doesn't come from makeup or a new outfit. It comes from peace, from freedom, from releasing what was never aligned with her. He watches from a distance as she rediscovers herself, piece by piece. Every part of her he once dismissed or minimized now becomes the very thing others admire. The same depth he couldn't appreciate is now something others find magnetic. And he's no longer a part of that world. He might try to come back, to test the waters, to see if the door is still open. Maybe it starts with a simple message, a memory, a "how have you been?" But what he doesn't understand is that the version of her he once knew no longer exists. She's not angry. She's not bitter. She's just unavailable in ways he can't reach anymore. She's grown beyond the need for his validation, beyond the old dynamic that kept her small. And while he may still see glimpses of the woman he once had, what he sees now is evolution. A woman who no longer lives in the shadow of what they were. There's a haunting beauty in watching someone you once had love you from a distance, knowing you're no longer part of their inner world. He'll notice the way she no longer reacts to him, the way she no longer explains herself, the way her silence carries more weight than her words ever did. That's when it really sinks in, not just that she's gone, but that she's free, not just from him, but from the version of herself that tolerated being hurt. And that realization hits deeper than he expected. He sees her now through the lens of loss, not because she's punishing him, but because she finally chose herself. That glow he once ignored is now unforgettable. And while others get to experience the light she carries, he's left watching from the sidelines, remembering the time when it was his to cherish, and knowing he let it slip through his hands